Steven Hatcher. What's up, my guy?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Fantastic. So I had to share this before we jump into the podcast and learn all about who Steven Hatcher is. Minerals guy. The infamous Steven Hatcher. I had a dream last night. I have dreams almost every night, and they're pretty vivid these days. That's for a different conversation. But last night, I actually had a dream. I don't know if it's because I was like anxious about this podcast, hadn't done a recording in a couple weeks, but I had a dream that I was doing a podcast and the guest was Johnny Damon. You know who Johnny Damon is?
Yeah, baseball player.
Baseball player, right.
Yeah.
Red Sox legend, played on the Yankees, played on a bunch of teams. And we were like 20 something minutes into it. And he's like, that's it. I got to go. This wasn't great. And I was so bummed out about it. And I woke up and I felt like it was real. Like, man, was that really my worst podcast? And it was Johnny Damon. Anyways, you're not Johnny Damon, but you are a fun guy.
That I'm not.
Just like Johnny Damon. Just like Johnny Damon was a fun guy. But, really wanted to have you on here today because you and I have known each other for a little while. When I met you, you were working at Sklar Exploration out of Boulder, one of the few.
What was the name of that Mexican joint that we used to go eat burritos at?
Efren's.
Yes. Yeah, that was my first. That was like you were at Petro DE.
Yes.
And I think you actually sold us. We actually bought the software.
You did.
A great piece of software for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the first interaction that we had, and then the small world that is oil and gas. We came to realize that we knew a bunch of the same people, and then we lived like a quarter of a mile away from each other.
Yeah, until you decided you didn't want to be a suburbs guy.
Yeah, I had to get out of Boulder County. Yeah.
So I want to know a little bit about you. We'll talk about Minerals Guy, one of your many ventures that you have going on. It seems like you and I are typically getting together to commiserate over all the different businesses we have, trying to manage family and work and all that fun stuff. But I want to introduce the audience to you, like your upbringing. I know you went to law school, like how you ended up in Colorado. Give us the full download on who Steven Hatcher is.
Yeah. I was reading this question and thinking, who is Steven Hatcher? Who am I? Who am I?
Right.
Yeah. So Steven Hatcher. So I grew up in a small town outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My dad was from Baton Rouge. His family hailed from Clinton, Louisiana, which is about an hour outside of Baton Rouge. My mom hailed from Central Louisiana, and she is a good Southern Louisiana Cajun coon ass, right? So I'm a little bit of a half redneck, half Cajun is what I call it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, both my parents' families were, in Louisiana. It's interesting. My grandpa passed last year, and I went down and I was going through a bunch of pictures with my grandmother, and she actually showed me this picture of the Hatchers in Clinton, Louisiana, that was taken in like 1907. And it looked like they were all dressed. It was like an old timey photo. They were all dressed in, Sunday best, and probably had to stand there for, 30 minutes. One grainy photo, but they were standing in it looked like a creek bed, or like the basically like so that all the adults were standing, towards the top, and, all the kids at the bottom. And it was just really cool to, it was really cool to kind of connect with my heritage, right? So that's where I was born. That's where I was raised. Growing up, I remember hot summers.
Yeah, I bet.
I remember wearing shorts on Christmas, most Christmases, crawfish at Easter, and LSU football, right? So that's that's a lot of it. I come from a big family. I've got 4 siblings who are now spread to the 4 winds. One of my younger brothers actually lives out here now. He's getting ready to graduate from mines. And so we've got some family out here, but yeah. I mean, Louisiana through and through. My wife is from Shreveport. I went to LSU for undergrad. I went to LSU for a couple of years, 3 years to be exact. And then my parents had moved to Atlanta, and they were like, "Why don't you come to Atlanta and finish your degree and
really
transfer on straight?" Yeah, yeah. So I moved to Atlanta and finished up there, and then I came back for phase 2 LSU for law school, and that went much better. Ended up moving to Shreveport after law school because of the Haynesville Shale. I had a bunch of buddies that had moved up to Shreveport after finishing undergrad that were all working as landmen, right? I didn't have no family in the industry, but I really went where opportunity was, right? So I was offered a job with an awesome firm, and those folks were really, really great to me. And yeah, I mean, that's how I ended up in Shreveport. I met my wife within like the first 3 months of moving there.
Wow.
And awesome community. Shreveport is fantastic. And I still have, a lot of folks that I keep up with that live there. So it's interesting. My mom still lives in Baton Rouge. My in-laws are in Shreveport, and we go to Shreveport just as much as we go to South Louisiana. Was dating a girl, got a job offer to move out to Colorado, and we call it our pit stop. I made a pit stop in Shreveport, met my wife, and then we moved out here and really started our married life, and that's when I went in house for Sklar and started my career. Not in the oil and gas, because in law practice, that was, 85% of our clients were, oil and gas producers. But, we got 2 kids. We live just north of Littleton in a little community. We love Colorado.
Yeah.
We go back to Louisiana a couple times a year, and, we love the people and the food, but we like the weather in Colorado. So
we're not supposed to tell people about that.
Yeah, right.
Remember, it's snowy and cold all winter. It's freezing.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because all my relatives and friends down in Louisiana, anytime they come to Colorado, they only go to the mountains, right? So that's
right.
When they have a vision of where I live, they think I live at 10,000 feet, and it's feet of snow, in the winter. And I'm like, no. Denver is very mild.
It's as sunny as San Diego here, but that's the big secret. So you started off as a lawyer, right? But we're working a lot in oil and gas. So you understood how to read contracts, you understood land, obviously you understood minerals. Were you working for Sklar, which has assets in the Black Warrior Basin
and so Gulf Coast? Yeah, Sklar's assets were Gulf Coast, so Texas all the way to Florida, right?
Wow.
If that makes sense. So Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, and the corpus of the company's assets were in South Alabama and Smackover. So the Black Warrior Basin was a coal bed methane play that got some action in the 2000s, but really, the corpus of what we did was in the Smackover and Norfolk formations, which is really fabulous conventional production. And when I joined Sklar, they had just discovered Brooklyn Field and were extremely active there, and it was a lot of fun. We did a lot of really, really cool projects.
So were you working for Sklar in Shreveport initially?
Yeah. So So I'll rewind, right? So Sklar was a big client of the firm, right? Okay. So there was a relationship there that went back, for a very long time, and and so I had the opportunity, to do some work and to meet, a guy who would become my mentor and eventually my boss at Sklar. We did work for, all sorts of producers in the Haynesville. Mainly I worked on transactions. I tried to avoid the litigation stuff as much as I could.
Sure.
But did a lot of, drilling individual or title opinions and, oil and gas transactions and assignments. And, one of the cool things about, land and legal is that it really permeates, um, everything about, the exploration for and production of oil and natural gas, right? So it's really the building blocks for how, companies, put these lands together, right? So that they can go out there and drill wells, right? And so, yeah, I mean, mineral law was a big portion of it, and I think I was drawn to property law and when I was in school, and it did really well, and so it was just a really natural fit, right? Once I actually started working for clients, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I really enjoy this. But one of the big transitions was when I made the jump to working for Sklar, because I'd always been when you're in private practice, your clients give you as much of the facts as you need, right, to in order to give them, in order to provide them the best counsel, right? So what was really cool about going to work at Sklar, right, is really kind of seeing like how these deals come together, right? From an idea, that a geologist or a geophysicist creates, to putting leases together, right, and actually sending guys out into the field to go acquire grassroots leases, to all of the deal work that goes into putting the capital together to actually be able to go out to drill wells, and then the engineers coming in and designing a drilling program and a completion program, and then turning the well over to production. And it's pretty cool. And one of the things that I love about our industry is that how do I describe it? It's like success in oil and gas comes at the intersection of multiple disciplines.
Sure.
Right. And I think that that's really cool, because it really is a team. It's a team sport, right? You've got, your geos that create these crazy ideas, right? Based on seismic or, based on well control or, whatever it is, right? All the way to the land guys that are putting the leases together, and the engineers that are actually, drilling these little holes in the ground that extend, miles upon end, to the accountants and the finance guys that figure out how you're going to pay for all this stuff. It's really pretty awesome when you think about it.
Yeah, it's like you've got an intersection of various different disciplines within the oil and gas company itself, and then also a little bit where I play on the technology side.
Yep.
Right. What are the technologies to optimize finding the asset, finding the rock, securing the lease, right? Looking at a map and knowing exactly where this is, to the drill bit that goes down hole and the geosteer, right? And that whole process all the way through to optimizing your lease operators. Which well should they go to first, right? Versus just driving in a square or a triangle every day, because you're trying to mitigate loss of production,
yep.
right? Increase revenue, and also, of course, avoid any sort of HSE related issues.
Yeah.
So I could imagine that for you, coming from the legal side of things, there's a lot for you to balance and think about, which has sort of led to why you've taken over as like fundamentally a CFO for the company that you work at. Sorry. COO for the company that you work for today, which is actually a Bakken operator. You want to tell us a little bit about Pritchell Ridge?
Yeah, sure. So, so Pritchell Ridge is an operating company. We operate assets up in the Williston Basin, mostly conventional production, actually, which is where the majority of my experience on the operations side has been in the conventional space. And we had an opportunity, myself and my partner here is a guy by the name of Tristan Farrell, to partner with an investor that was really, they were in trouble, right, in 2020, right. a lot of bad things happened in 2020 in oil and gas.
Yeah.
And, we were able to come in, and they gave us a chance, right? We put a business plan together and put it in front of them. And what we've done over the past couple of years is we've assembled a team, and we've helped them to manage and clean up this asset that they owned, with the goal of eventually, monetizing it and helping them to create incremental value. And it's been an awesome experience. It really has. Yeah, I mean, we operate about 60 wells, right? So we've got a staff here in Denver. We've got staff up in North Dakota, and man, North Dakota can be tough. Those winters are hard. Yeah, coming from the South, coming from Louisiana, and coming from the Gulf Coast. I mean, it's a whole, like, when it was 0 degrees here, right around Christmas, when that blizzard, kind of blew through the whole country, it was negative 40 in Williston. And, just nothing works, or very few things work at negative 40. And, thankfully our team did a really good job of getting through it. But, yeah, we're on the market, and we're hopeful that we will sell the asset here within the next 3 to 6 months. So,
well, that's exciting, and we'll have to have you come back on if and when that transaction ever does happen. But I'm curious now, because you mentioned something that's fascinating to me fundamentally. I haven't spent that much time out in the field. I mean, except for the Permian, because like you've got offices that sit very close to wells, and I guess California too, where you can't really avoid it if you go to Bakersfield, and even LA County to an extent. But like the true remote field operations, what happens when it gets to 40 below? Like how do you function? How does it function? Like, I know some of this stuff can work on its own, I guess, once you're in production, but things still go wrong. Things shut down. Like, how do you get out to the asset? How do things happen when it's 40 below?
Well, you got to have a really good field team. I'll tell you that, right? And guys that are willing to go and run these routes when it's 40 below. And for us, when blizzards are rolling through, I mean, it is very much, a safety focus, right? First and foremost, our guys need to take care of themselves, right? And they need to make sure that they're not putting themselves at risk. But I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, the main thing that you want to do is keep all the wells pumping, right? Because if the wells will stay pumping, right, then all sorts of bad things happen when the wells get shut in for one reason or another when it gets that cold. But I mean, it's a different ball game when you're talking about cold weather operations. So,
and it's not just North Dakota, right? I mean, you look at like Alberta as well. I'm sure they're used to dealing with this, and they're even colder than that for more of the year. So there's probably a playbook out there, but it's just crazy to me that, like I get how things can happen in the Permian Basin when it gets too hot, when it gets to be 130 degrees. Like, sure, there could be some challenges, but when it gets that cold and it's a health risk to even expose your skin, right? It requires a different type of individual to A, be willing to go out and do it, and then B, be outside and solving problems at the wellhead, which are inevitably going to happen because of that cold weather.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, and it all just comes down to the team that you have in the field, and those guys they're just built different. Yeah. There's no question. There's no question about it.
Guys like you and me can sit in the back office, the comfort of all the heat.
Yeah, I try to get up there about once every 6 weeks.
Okay,
just to because that's one of the things that that we don't want is edicts coming from Denver. Like any lease operator that is working in the Williston Basin, that is the last thing that they want to come down, right? So it's all about it's just managing your guys and just making sure that they have the tools that they need to be successful, and just listening to them and hearing, because I mean what they do is very difficult, right? And we it's very easy to take for granted when I'm sitting in an office, here in Denver, Colorado. So
totally. Yeah, that's always been a fascinating part of oil and gas to me, right? You've got people sitting in these beautiful buildings, right, with mountain views, or sitting on the 52nd floor telling people what to do that are out in the field in negative temperatures. So it could create a very detrimental dichotomy. But obviously showing your face out there and providing them with all the tools that they can survive seems to be a big deal. I want
Yeah.
to talk a little bit about you mentioned old, like vertical wells,
Yeah.
right? Traditional production. When a company like Pritchell Ridge sells their asset, are you just selling the existing production, or are you also selling the asset and the company with the idea that someone will come in and drill horizontal wells in the same acreage? Or like, how does that work?
Well, it depends. It depends on what you have and what exactly it is that you're selling, right? So, yeah, I mean, the answer is that yes. I mean, you can sell if you own rights, right, to the shale zones, right, the Bakken, then certainly, yeah, you can sell that. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways to skin that, right? There are large companies, historically, what happened is, as all of the organic leases and existing production all got gobbled up, by the big guys that control the shale plays. What you'll oftentimes see is a divestiture of all of the older stuff, right? Of
Yep.
all of the kind of pre-shale, whether it's kind of Gen 1 horizontal, or older vertical type production, right? And so there are different companies, right, that look, there are the shale guys, and there are guys that look to drill unconventional wells, produce, operate unconventional wells, and there's a whole nother realm of folks, right, that play in the vertical space. So folks that are buying assets just for kind of pure PDP blowdown, what is a term that you would use to just buy a stream of cash flows from a producing asset, and guys that are buying stuff and looking at it and saying, hey, this field was being developed and then shale happened and everybody forgot about it. So we see opportunity to come in here and drill additional vertical wells.
So another question, because this is just really interesting stuff to me. Is the most likely acquirer of an asset or a company like a Pritchell Ridge somebody that has contiguous acreage, or does it really just vary? Like, because to me, it would make sense if I already have a field office and I already have guys and a team and familiarity with how to operate in cold weather conditions or mountainous conditions, that we'd be more interested in buying what you have than somebody who's, say, operating in the Haynesville Shale.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's all about, economies of scale, which is kind of what you were just describing. Right. And yeah, I mean, have the folks that are interested in, buying a particular asset are the folks that already own assets in that area, I think is kind of what you're getting at. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there are folks that look for opportunities,
Sure.
across the lower 48, that are going to be opportunistic and of course, if they think that they can buy it and they believe in the deal, then they'll enter a new basin. But, yeah, I mean, certainly, the folks that are interested in buying a deal are probably folks that have staff, they have wells in the area, right? It's just
Sure.
a matter of adding wells to existing pumping routes. That's a very natural fit. Yeah.
Logical. So I want to talk about Minerals Guy. So
Yeah.
a little bit of history on this, right? You and I were talking over the summer about various things, but one of them was you've kind of seen what I've done with Funk Futures and podcasting, content creation, brand building, and said, I have this idea, right? And I really think that there's an opportunity for me here with my experience, with my expertise, and full understanding of minerals, which I don't even fully understand, to be completely transparent about it. And
Well,
and
you
they,
have to subscribe to my content, Jeremy.
and that you had an idea. So tell us, like, where did Minerals Guy come from? And then, of course, what is Minerals Guy?
Yeah. Yeah. So the impetus for Minerals Guy, right? So a couple of things, right? The way that people consume media has changed, and it has changed forever, right? So, social media, good, bad, ugly, whether you like it, whether you hate it, it is absolutely here to stay, right? And these little things that we carry around in our pockets are how people get their news. It's how they communicate with friends and family. This is, this is our entire lives are on these devices, right? Yep. And I mean, and so that's the first piece, right? And you use social media. There are, it doesn't matter what industry you talk about, right? Whether you're talking about tech, whether you're talking about real estate, whether you're talking about, the medical field, right? There are, there are so many outlets, right, where people have said, you know what, I can use this device, I can use social media to reach and provide my expertise to people, and totally. Here's the platform to be able to do it. And it's the whole concept of the creator economy, right? And or the influencer economy, whatever you want to call it, and you can love it or hate it, but it is very real, right? Yep. And so, I mean, that is one piece of it, right? And so it's just the recognition that social media is here and it's here to stay. It's things like podcasts, it's YouTube, it's crazy enough, it's things like TikTok.
TikTok, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, we can talk about TikTok here in a minute. But yeah, I mean, so really what I started looking at, and then the other concept is, and I think that this is something that you'll resonate with, and hopefully some of your listeners, I heard a guy say, your biggest problem is not that you are not an expert in your given field, right? So your biggest problem is not that you're not an expert in your given field. You are an expert, right? Your biggest problem is obscurity and that no one knows who you are.
Totally.
Right? So just marinate on that for a second, right? So I looked at it and I looked at, because I consume, on YouTube and Instagram and all these different things. And I've got people that I follow, for investment advice or for real estate or whatever it is. And I looked at oil and gas, right? And I looked at, minerals in particular, where I have a lot of knowledge and expertise. And I said, no one is doing this. There's nothing out there. There's nothing out there. If I'm a mineral owner and I want to know, about activity in my area, if I want to understand, who should I be dealing with? What are red flags when people are calling me asking to buy? How do I deal with landmen? How are minerals valued?
Yeah.
Right. What makes one mineral acre valuable? Right. And there's absolutely, nothing out there. And so I saw that and I really kind of felt like if I didn't do it, someone else would. Yeah. And that I would kick myself, 3 or 5 years down the road, for not, taking a chance, so that's really that's the story behind it. So what I did is I called this guy that I know named Jeremy Funk, who started recording these podcasts. And I said, how do I do this?
And I said, talk to Nicole.
Yeah. 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 And it was really cool because when I started thinking about ideas for content, I think I filled up a whole, like multiple pages of notes, inside of like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have valuable content that I can give, to mineral owners, and, why not do it? So.
And like to go back to that period of time, I think you and I had a bunch of conversations, and it reminded me a little bit of when I was getting started with the podcast. My first thought was, okay, is this going to create value for anybody? And then two is, who's going to listen to this?
Yeah.
Right? What if this is a failure? And you asked me those same questions too. And the truth is, like, well, if you do nothing, like, of course it's going to be a failure. Yep. If you do something and 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 people listen to you speak, right? Watch your videos and get value from it, then how could you deem that a failure? Right? It's taking that first step, and it's been really cool to see you take this first step and knowing that you have lots of other educational content, which is probably going to morph a little bit more into, more of a business, I would guess, at some point, but lots of really cool educational content that's going to put you out there as a subject matter expert in the mineral space, and then have people start coming to you to talk about minerals. You also made a comparison that really stuck with me early on because I was struggling to think about, okay, what is he talking about with this whole minerals thing? And you said, if you want to know what your house is worth, where do you go? I go, well, I just go to Zillow, right? Or I go to Redfin or whatever it is. You're like, you can't do that with minerals, right? So somebody owns these minerals. In a lot of cases, maybe they're inherited. They really have no idea what their minerals are worth. And that's
they have
crazy.
no idea. They have no idea. I mean, there's a bunch of, it's just, that was believe me, I love that line. There's no zestimate for your minerals. I told that to my wife the first time, and I just smiled. She was like, "You just think you're so clever," but it's so true, right? I mean, and not that it's so overly complicated that an average layman can't get their head wrapped around it. But yes, I mean, there's no one stop shop. There's no website that you can go to that's going to give you inside of 30 seconds the value of your mineral rights, right? So, a lot of folks are relying on, basically just a multiple of cash flow type analysis when they're selling, right? And so, that can be good or that can be bad, right? If you're talking about, conventional production or, wells that, a property that has been fully drilled, right? And you're kind of down the slope of the decline curve, then a multiple of cash flow analysis makes sense. But if you had one well drilled on your property, in 2010, for example, in DeSoto Parish, right, and you sell for a multiple of cash flow at 60 months, then you are getting your face ripped off. There's just absolutely, I mean, so there's a lot of different factors that you really need to look at, right? Or that mineral owners should look at to make sure that they are getting fair value, right? And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to bring, and frankly, what I want to do is I want to pull back the curtain for folks, and I want to be like, here is how I look at deals, right? Here's how I would assign value. Right. And these are the things that you need to be thinking about, right? It's not just the wells that are in production that you're getting cash flow for, right? It's you can have a permit on your property, or maybe you live out of state, right? You live in California, right? But you inherited minerals in Louisiana. If a mineral buyer calls you and you sell for, 60 months of cash flow, but there's, 4 ducks sitting on your property that are about to get fracked, then you were giving away the farm. So it's the idea that, the way that I believe that, transactions should be conducted is, folks should know, they should go into it eyes wide open, right? With all of the factors on the table, right? And there's a lot of folks out there that are never sellers. They don't want to hear it. They'll never sell. And that's all fine and good. But for all the people that are on the fence that look at it and they say, you know what? Like, I own minerals. This is great. This is an asset on my personal balance sheet. But you know what? I really care about doing something over here, right? How do those people make sure that they're getting fair value, right? And so that's what I hope Minerals Guy will provide. And what I hope is that these folks will call me, So we'll see where it goes. I mean, it's going to be, when you told me this, you were like, if you do it, you have to commit. Right? Yeah. There's no, create 3 videos and then hang it up because it didn't work. You got your feelings hurt because you only got 10 views or whatever. I mean, it's very like I'm in it. My goal is to do 35 long form videos on YouTube this year, which I believe will help me get into the YouTube algorithm. And it's really about building momentum, and hopefully it will start the flywheel through time. As basically I've got all these touch points across the internet, people on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok and my website and the blog. It's all these things that, these search engines look at, right?
Sure.
And that's how they decide how to rank, how far to the top you get. So my goal for Minerals Guy is that inside of the next 12 months, when you search minerals, sell minerals, how are minerals valued, my content is right there for people.
Nice.
So,
well, I think you're well on your way, and being consistent is a big part of that. Because I think I read somewhere when I first started my podcast that like 85 or 90% of podcasts are 8 to 10 episodes. So, and I could really see how that would happen. Like, I'm not making any money off of this. In fact, I'm investing time, which in my case is money. Is this really worth it? You start to question it. I could be doing other things, but it really is about being consistent. And I can already see with the amount of content that you've put out that you are consistent, which is really, really cool and something I appreciate. And I know that you'll be successful with this because you're passionate about it. And that's the most important thing. You've also, Stephen, on another topic, been incredibly inspirational for me. Some people know this. Certainly not everybody listening to this podcast is aware of this. But in late August, I decided to check myself into rehab. I felt like some of my issues were getting out of control, especially with alcohol, and have decided to commit to a life of sobriety. Now, I've been hesitant to talk about this, especially on this platform, but it is a big part of who I am and what I'm working through on a daily basis. And in that process of finding myself a path to sobriety, you've been quite an inspiration for me, Stephen, and just really wanted to share that. I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's a great way of life, certainly it's something that, everybody deals with, right? In some form or another, whether it's a family member or, a friend. I mean, there's just, for better or for worse, right? I mean, it touches on, our lives yeah, I mean, I would say that well, let me start by saying this. Yeah. I mean, I've been sober for, over 15 years.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah. Which is crazy because when I got sober, I did not plan on staying sober this long. And, it's crazy. I got sober when I was 21, and I was shown this way of life. And, I've built an incredible life. Right. And now I'm married and I've got kids and I've got, all of these, really cool things that are happening, in business. And it's just, my life is incredibly full. Right. And a lot of people look at me like I got 3 heads whenever I tell them I'm sober. Most people don't even realize it, to be honest with you. Because if I'm out, and you get this too, like if you're out, I get a club soda and a lime and, no one's the wiser, but every once in a while, somebody figures it out. I mean, I don't know, man. It's a huge part of my identity. It's a big part of who I am as a man, as a husband, as a father. And yeah, when you called me, what did I say? Welcome to the club.
We've been waiting for your entry.
But I think it's awesome, man. I'm incredibly proud of what you're doing, and obviously, like being open to speaking freely about it, on a podcast is pretty crazy. And really, the only reason that I do this, is if we can reach one person out there, what I'm saying, that is struggling themselves, or, they know someone close to them that's struggling, just to provide hope, right? That there's life on the other side of that. Right. And I think that was the hard thing for you, is you were just like, I can't imagine my life with it. I can't imagine my life without it. And if you ever get to that place, you're totally screwed.
And that's where I was, candidly, and I didn't know what to do. But in our conversations, even when we weren't talking about sobriety whatsoever, what I noticed was, Funk Futures does some marketing, and shout out to Nicole Nixon. She's been doing a lot of the content creation, editing, and so on and so forth for Minerals Guy. She's absolutely fantastic, probably the best that there is, and really fortunate. You're fortunate to be able to work with her, and I'm fortunate.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, right. And I'm fortunate that I can refer projects over to her. But when somebody comes to us and says, "Yeah, we want to engage you guys for some marketing help," we come back with sort of a series of questions, and then we set up an introductory call. And nobody actually answers those questions, for the record, but you did. you answered them in really great detail, and the gears started to churn for me. You were so prepared for that meeting, and I was thinking, this is different. How does this guy have it? And it's like, we talked about it afterwards. I was like, how the hell are you so prepared? You said, well, sobriety is a cheat code. And in the last 5 months, I've kind of learned that about myself too, that I think a lot of what I was trying to do, and, losing Tim, of course, was really, really hard for me. And I'm not going to make any excuses, but it started to help me down a path that was not necessarily the most positive. And what I wanted to do was just check out, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to face life because I wasn't happy with how a lot of things were going. And I didn't want to deal with some of the more recent pain and even some of the longer term pain that I'd experienced in my life. And in sobriety, you feel a lot of those things more, right?
You feel all of it.
You feel all of it. And that's been heavy and difficult for me, but really the only way is through, because the other paths are effectively, they were just delaying my inevitable pain, right? 100%. And maybe even making some of that pain worse. But it really kind of hit me when I was, I don't know, it was probably about 4 months after Tim had passed, just how much that really hurt. Like, I knew that it hurt at the time, and being at his funeral and all that stuff was terrible. But I was more comfortable numbing myself out and not feeling it. And I don't think I'm the only person that deals with their struggles or has dealt with struggles by doing that. But then finally, when I had a little bit of clarity, I was like, oh man, this still hurts. And maybe it's always going to hurt. And that's part of life, man. That's part of growth. And it's not always going to be comfortable. But I've seen growth in myself as a man, as a businessman, and more importantly, as a father. I don't know if you saw on LinkedIn today, I threw a post out there. My son turned 5 today, which is like a really great
deal, man.
It's a big deal. You've got young sons, and for me, it was like, it's a chance to reflect on the past few years and how excited I am, hopefully, to continue setting a good example for him, and just show that, like, even though it's the societal norm to lean in very heavily to alcohol and have it be a social thing, it doesn't have to be like that for everyone. And maybe it is for some people and they can live just fine. But for me, it was just a means to escape, and particularly escape some of my problems. And the problems are still there. They don't go away. You just face them head on.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, it's definitely the path less traveled, right? And, but, I can't imagine my life any other way, to be honest with you, because I built a life, that is really incompatible with alcohol.
Right.
Right. Everybody that knows me, knows that I'm sober. My sons have never seen me drink.
Yeah.
My wife has never seen me drink. And
wow.
And don't get me wrong. Like when I didn't just get sober because, because life was going great. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do they say? Like, nobody gets sober on a winning streak, right? And, I made it to a pretty dark place,
Same.
right? And and I know it in some ways just because of family history and what we know about alcoholism and drug addiction and things like that there are a lot of yets for me, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so I choose this life of sobriety, because it's really the only way that I know how to live. I mean, I got sober when I was a kid. I learned how to live in sobriety. And so I know that I've got a lot to lose today, right? And there are just so many things. Like the way that I think about it is, you know, my God, my higher power didn't put me on this planet to go through life having to use alcohol and drugs to cope, right?
Mm.
That's not what that was. I don't believe in my heart of hearts that was intended as part of the human experience, right? That people would have to do that, right, in order to get through life, right? And for anybody listening, like if you're at the point where that's where you're at, and you relate to that, just know that, I mean, like there is another path, right? And it's a beautiful life. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting excited just hearing you talk, kind of like I did when I first went down this path. But just wanted to thank you, Stephen, for being an inspiration for me,
Yeah.
for kind of showing what it could be like um, to live this way. And I'm heading to NAPE. I think this podcast should come out.
Landman spring break, hashtag Landman spring break. Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah.
Great. There goes my streak. No,
Yeah.
but I mean, I've been thinking about it, and if you asked me 4 months ago, I would have said I shouldn't go to this event. And now I've just started to build in habits and patterns and behaviors in my life that I'm really not anxious or concerned at all. In fact, I'll probably have my most productive NAPE and still stay out as late as I did
Yeah.
at previous events. So I'm almost excited to embrace this experience, besides it being, like you said, Landman spring break and being a big booze fest, which it had been for me in the past too.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm certainly not alone in all that. But Stephen, final thoughts. Really appreciate you coming on, especially getting deep with us here over the past dozen minutes or so. But where can people find Minerals Guy content,
Yep.
you, all that stuff?
Yeah, so that's the first thing that I did when I came up with this idea, as I went and got all the handles. So, obviously, mineralsguide.com, check us out. The primary long form content is on YouTube. It's youtube.com at Minerals Guy. So you can find us on there if you search us there. And then we didn't even get a chance to talk about TikTok, but TikTok is nuts, dude. It's absolutely bananas.
Just as far as how many views and touches.
Well, it's just like Russian roulette. I don't even really like using it, because you just don't know what you're going to get, in terms of like the next video that's going to pop up. But
Sure.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the number of views, I've got more people that have followed on TikTok than all the other platforms combined. But anyhow, yeah, you can find us across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, really all of the above. So yeah, I mean, to anybody that's out there listening, yeah, please go watch the content. Yeah, give us a like. If you subscribe on our YouTube channel, that is like so incredibly helpful to us, just because it helps us to get the content in front of more folks. It's a blend of likes and subscribes, and that's just how all these algorithms work. So yeah, that's where you can find us.
Well, it's interesting stuff. It's fascinating, and I look forward to finding the minerals estimate on the Minerals Guy.
I call it something else. Yeah, I'll have to come up with a royalty estimate.
A restimate. Yeah,
I like it. But yeah, anybody, and here's the deal too. Anybody reach out to me direct. Stephen at mineralsguy.com. On anything having to do with minerals, anything having to do with sobriety, like whatever. Like, I'd love to hear from any of you. And yeah, this is an awesome outlet, buddy. I appreciate you having me on.
My man, Hatcher has hatched. Minerals Guy.